morning, dear friends. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Olha Bondarenko. I'm head of Department of Criminal Legal Disciplines and Judicial in Sumy State University in Ukraine. And actually, I had to make this video because a safety situation in our country is horrible. Actually, it's my second try to do this video because during the first time I make this video, my city was attacked by Shahed, and actually it was awful because there are some damages for buildings, and it's horrible. So there are many different problems with internet connection and also with electricity, so I decided to make this video to be sure that I can join you during this great conference. And the topic of my presentation is the challenges of combating corruption in higher education institutions within the framework of the integrity policy. At first, I'd like to say the right to education is regarded as a fundamental human right, ensuring equal access to primary education for all individuals, regardless of factors such as race, gender, nationality, religion, political options, and age. The right gained universal recognition with the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. And has since been ensured in various international conventions, national constitution, and development plans. The Constitution of Ukraine is not the exception in upholding this right. It is important to note that while the right to higher education is now classified as a fundamental right, it is not the obligation of the state to provide the higher education to every citizen. But instead, in Ukraine, nearly 80% of high school graduates enroll the higher education institution, and more than 50% of individuals aged 25-34 process higher education degrees. It's a pity, but the level of corruption in our country is really high, and the sphere of higher education is not exception. And considering the task of combating corruption in the field of higher education in Ukraine is important. This is also confirmed by the anti-corruption strategy. According to the strategy, the field of education is one of the most priorities when it comes to taking measures to combat corruption. The main objective of the document, which was made between the National Agency of Prevention of Corruption and National Agency of Quality Assurance of Higher Education, was a big step of combating corruption in higher level education. They significant memorandum between cooperation. And according to this document, the main task is to reduce instances of corruption risk in higher education institutions. This memorandum will contribute to the implementation of several groups of measures outlined in the state anti-corruption strategy programs. These measures aim to ensure the quality of education, including some measures. The first one is implementation principles of academic integrity in higher education. The second one is preparing proposals to improve legislative regulation and implementation measures to minimize the risk of academic integrity violation in higher education institutions. And the third one is developing quality standards for higher education in a field of anti-corruption compliance. Regardless of the numerous doctrinal interpretation, the foundation of law enforcement lies in the legal definition of academic integrity, which outlined in the Part 1 of Article 42 of the Law of Ukraine on Education. According to this law, academic integrity encompasses a set of ethical principles and rules defined by legislation. Participants in the educational process, including learners, educators, and researchers, should adhere to these principles during their studies, teaching, scientific or creative activities. The law also provides a list of instances of academic misconduct. The first among that it's academic plagiarism, which refers to the act of presenting scientific or creative results obtained by others, or one researches or reproduction publishes text or work of other authors without proper attribution. The second form of academic dishonesty is self-plagiarism, which involves publishing one's own previously published scientific results as new scientific findings. We propose to consider the third and the fourth manifestation in a comparative context. The definition characteristic of fabrication and falsification is the creation of unreliable data for research or education purpose. Fabrication involves investigation data or facts that are used in the educational progress of scientific research. Falsification, on the other hand, refers the modification of existing data associated with the educational process or scientific research. The next manifestation is cheating, which entails the use of external sources of information not permitted for use, particularly during the evaluation of learning outcomes. And the last type of academic dishonesty is exerting influence in any form on a pedagogical or scientific pedagogical employee to bear the evolution of educational results. In my opinion, this concept is linked to action involving unlawful benefits. Therefore, it is appropriate to consider them together as proposed in the draft law of academic integrity. During discussing integrity and corruption in education, it is important to identify the main potential corruption risk. According to USAID report on the assessment of corruption risk in the field of legal education, the main corruption risks include, for example, the first one in corruption risk associated with the anti-corruption program within higher education institutions. The second one is corruption risk associated with the activities of the Anti-Corruption Commission and/or management of higher education institutions regarding the implementation of anti-corruption program. According to the anti-corruption strategy, corruption risk is a field of higher education include issue related to access to higher education and the process of awaiting doctoral degrees. When investigating corruption in higher education, it is important to recognize the interest in a form post-education seekers and scientific and pedagogical staff, as well as employees of dean's offices and even the management of educational institutions. It would be incorrect to place the sole responsibility on the employee of educational institutions. The low motivation of education seeks often leads to the explanation of alternative ways to obtain the positive assessment. Additionally, the prevalence of the nepotism within educational circles should not be overlooked. Corruption is not always limited to traditional forms of bribery. The concept of unlawful benefit, which underlies most corruption offenses, includes both material and not material advantages, benefits, and services. Therefore, corruption in higher education involves not only monetary rewards, but also favoritism and personal connection. Over the past decades, there has been a growing consensus that higher education institutions need to comparative strategy to promote and uphold academic integrity while effectively addressing the issue of misconduct by students and academic staff. This strategy should encompass various elements and approaches to be effective in tackling the problem. It is critical to recognize the connection between academic integrity, ethics, and long-term personal business and career success. The goal of an academic integrity policy should go simply policing academic misconduct. It should aim to foster a culture and a climate that prioritize the support of academic integrity. In my opinion, several key measures can be effective. The first one, an open managerial approach to recognize is essential. Some countries lack clear criteria for hiring scientific and pedagogical staff, leading to decisions influenced by favoritism and nepotism. Second, educational activities should be conducted among scientific and pedagogical staff as well as students to promote an understanding of academic integrity. These activities can include training programs, workshops, some seminars focused on ethical plagiarism prevention and responsible research practices. Third, activity implementation of anti-corruption certificate programs can be beneficial. These programs can provide specialized training and certification to individuals responsible for ensuring integrity within higher education institutions. Such programs can enhance their capacity to identify, prevent, and address corrupt practices effectively. Finally, cooperation with public organizations in the cost of combating corruption is essential. Collaborating with external entities such as non-government organizations, civil society groups, and anti-corruption agencies can bring additional expertise and support to combat corruption in higher education. The second aspect is conducting educational events among scientific and pedagogical workers and students. Institutions should promote positive values among the younger generation through four tactics. Instilling positive values as various stages of youth development, fostering creativity, collaborating with stakeholders, and maybe some new practices which can be promoted by the higher level education institution. By employing these tactics, higher education institution can contribute to the cultivation of ethical values and prevention of corruption among students and educators. The third measure involves the implementation of certificate anti-corruption programs. We believe that higher education institutions should widely implement anti-corruption certificate programs as they have the potential to transform public perception of corruption and ultimately reduce it in this institution. The fourth measure involves the establishment of local regulatory framework for combating corruption in each higher education institution. Education is a unique foundation of society that shares the same purpose as the entire society itself. While various sectors of the economy produce some materials and spiritual goods and services for personal use, the educational system shapes individuals, influencing their intellectual, moral, and psychical development. Corruption in a field of education may be particularly harmful as it affects minors and young people. To tackle this issue effectively, each institution of higher education needs to have a local regulatory framework dedicated to combating corruption. The first measure is cooperation with public organizations in a concept of combating corruption. Higher education institutions can benefit from a practical anti-corruption training provided by public authorities or public organization collaboration with more than 200 anti-corruption public organizations in Ukraine and can contribute to implementation of educational activities in various formats, aiming to educate and instill a strong opposition to cooperation. In conclusion, I'd like to say that combating corruption in higher education is significant, and the effectiveness of anti-corruption measures will be long-term implementation for erading tolerance toward corruption among the young generation. Academic integrity serves as a foundation for the legal provision of educational service, and it is critical to address any shortcomings in the legislative framework related to academic dishonesty. Their proposed measures included educational activities, anti-corruption certificate programs, local regulatory frameworks, and cooperation with public organizations hold promise in preventing corruption in higher education. That's all. I'm very grateful to be a part of this conference. I'm very upset that I can't join you online, but I hope that my speech, that my presentation will help you to understand the level of corruption in higher level education in Ukraine. And I must say that really the safety situation is really hard, but instead of this, we don't miss our tries to combat corruption, to make a really good system and strategy of combating corruption in all spheres, especially in sphere of higher education, because we know that our minors and our young people is our future. I'm very grateful, and I hope I see you guys later. Goodbye.